Welcome to the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, a program dedicated to uncovering the unified nature of reality and humanity's ever-evolving place as truly galactic beings. For more information on the Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, visit us online at www.thescienceofmagic.net.
Welcome to the Science of Magic, a place where science and magic come together to transform fact into evolving truth. We're coming to you through the X-Zone Broadcast Network, xzbn.net. We can also be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. This hour we'll be exploring the fall from grace. Being human has never been easy or natural for me. I was born extremely sensitive, so sensitive, in fact, that today I probably would have been diagnosed as autistic. The human world grated on me to the point that I sought out nature and animals as companions. When I was but 4 years old and would come up missing on the farm, which was often, my stepmother would find me sitting out on the ground with a baby rabbit playing in my lap, wallowing in the grass with a garter snake weaving itself around my fingers, or in a tree surrounded by ravens. I was always lonesome and human around humans and found their propensity to live a lie painful and toxic. Animals were honest. They never hurt or beat me, always acting according to their nature and without malice. We understood each other. They were my friends and my saviors. Whether domestic or wild, I always could understand them and seemingly them me. By the time I was 5 and entered kindergarten, I rarely spoke to humans. It was thought I was mentally impaired. I remember wondering, what's the use? They either lie to you or treat you like you're an idiot, usually both. So while other children were socializing, I would take up crayons and paper and draw animals. Alas, childhood comes to an end, and one must learn to conform to society or perish. I was sent to Saudi Arabia to live with my mother and stepfather. It was a barren, harsh desert land, and outside of the occasional lizard, there were very few animals. The locals herded goats and camels, but as a fair-skinned, red-headed girl child, the likelihood of my being kidnapped and sold was very high. So I was restricted to the fenced-in American encampment and surrounded by humans. It wasn't until I went to boarding school in Switzerland and took up backpacking that my deep relationship with animals could continue. Even so, I found I had to be out by myself away from other humans for several days before the animals would approach me and communicate with me again. It was as if I'd come back into myself and, as I used to think of it, get the city off of me before they would once again recognize me as one of their own. In my profession as a shamanic teacher, I've seen animals do some amazing things. I had facilitated a young man's vision quest high in the Rocky Mountains, holding vigil and keeping the fire burning for 3 days. The evening of his return, we were sitting around the fire. He was breaking his fast and telling me of his new spirit guide, the red fox, that had appeared to him in spirit while on his quest. Suddenly, I saw 2 glowing eyes, and a red fox walked out of the forest, big as you please, and in full physical form. He sat down right next to my student. After about 5 minutes of looking into my student's eyes, the fox stood and silently melted back into the forest. On another vision quest I sponsored in Utah, I was silently making my midnight rounds, checking on my students, when I found my youngest female student curled up near a yearling moose in the tall grass. After her quest, she reported a dream in which her new spirit animal, the moose, appeared to her. I didn't mention what I'd seen. If the moose would have wanted her to know, I'm sure it would have awakened her. But I know what I saw, and it amazes me to this day. It's not that I see myself as all that special. I think that somewhere along the line, as we have become so enamored with the things and the ways of the human world, we fell from grace. We lost contact with the real world, the world of animals, plants, and nature. If we had not, there's no way we could commit the abominations on animals, nature, and each other that is so commonplace today. We've fallen from grace, and our only salvation is completely dependent upon our return. My guest this hour has dedicated his life to facilitating this very return to the natural world. Tamarack Song, author of Becoming Nature, Learning the Language of Wild Animals and Plants, spent most of his childhood running with wild animals, and as a young adult he lived with a pack of wolves. Now, living in the Nakata National Forest, his yard is certified wildlife habitat, and he manages a natural preserve. Tamarack helped pioneer the natural landscaping movement by being the first person in his state to win the legal right to convert his lawn into native prairie and woodland. Tamarack's goal is to help everyone learn animal language who wishes to do so, that they too can look in the eyes of a wolf or talk to birds and squirrels. I will introduce Tamarack and his amazing contribution to our return to grace after this short break. You are listening to The Science of Magic. This and other innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net.
One people, one nation, searching for the light. One people, one nation, coming from the stars. One people, one nation.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com. Welcome back. This is The Science of Magic, dedicated to unification and evolution of consciousness. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. Our guest this hour is Tamarack Song, author of Becoming Nature, Learning the Language of Wild Animals and Plants, www.teachingdrum.org. Tamarack, thanks so much for joining us on The Science of Magic.
Thank you, Gwilda. It's great to be here, and I look forward to our sharing. And by the way, your introduction was beautiful. You know, your story runs a very close parallel to my story. I see we're kindred souls here. It's good to be with you.
I think that's the case. I do. Hey, first off, I'm sure our listeners are dying to hear your story about living with the wolves. Would you mind sharing your experience?
Oh, I'd be glad to. Well, I won't start at the beginning because that goes back in prehistory sometime, I think. You know, we all have ancestral memories that we inherit, and when I was young, from my earliest memories, I had this attachment to canines. I didn't understand it, of course, and my parents didn't either, because we would walk by somewhere and dogs would just be drawn to me and I'd be drawn to them, and it wasn't just to pet them or play with them. You know, kids are playing with puppies, you know, but there was something deeper there. We would look into each other's eyes. There was some sort of, I don't know, maybe magic, as my parents saw it. They knew that there was something special there in that relationship. And as I grew up, I learned about foxes and wolves, and I remember when I was 7 or 8 years of age, I was out in the fields. I grew up in a small farming town, and my brothers and I would run around in the fields all the time, the fields and the woods and the swamps. And there was this stream with high banks, and there was this den hole there, and I just knew it was a red fox den. And it was spring flood time, and the snow was starting to melt, and I knew the water was going to rise. And I thought, oh, what is the fox going to do? And I looked further up on the bank, and I thought, well, why doesn't the fox move up there? And my brothers and I came through there, probably 3 or 4 weeks later, and sure enough, the fox moved her den further up on the bank. And there was just this intrinsic connection, this sense of knowing that came from becoming the fox as a little kid, just becoming the animal and feeling what the animal feels, and going through those through that visceral experience of being the animal. And this hung with me, and visions of wolves would come when I was a child, and I would imagine, where I grew up was farm country. There were 40-acre woodlots, but nothing that would support wolves for sure. The wolves had been long ago exterminated from the area. Yet I saw and felt the spirits of the wolves in the woods, and I would imagine that the wolves were still there, and I was running with them. I was running with a pack of wolves. And then in my mid-20s, I moved to a bigger city after college, and I started a couple of businesses. And I had a record store, a music store. And I, my friends, my customers knew a lot about me because I was, it was a small, very personable business. And they knew I was into the wilds, and that wolves for me were a symbol of the wilds. And one of the one of my customers, who was also a friend, stopped in one day and said, "Hey, Tamarack, just came home from up north, and I stopped at this little roadside zoo, and which were really common back then along the roads. The tourists would stop, and there'd be a few wild animals in cages, and they could buy some popcorn and soda to feed to the animals, which was terrible for them, but that's what they did. And there's usually a gift shop there and that sort of thing." And he said, well, they had a pack of wolves there, and the wolves just had pups. And I had no idea there was a pair of wolves, not a pack. There was a pair of wolves that had pups. And I had no idea there were any wolves this close. It was about 80 miles away, maybe. So at my earliest convenience, I hopped in my Volkswagen and went up to visit the people who were running the little roadside zoo. And I talked with them, and it was pitiful. I walked into the compound where the animals were. They had a big fence around it with small cages inside for the animals. And this pair of wolves was in maybe an 8 by 10 foot enclosure with a doghouse in the back. And the female wolf, the mother, was laying there in front, panting. She was really hot. And the male was just pacing back and forth, just had a rut worn in the sod, and they were pitiful looking. It was just terrible, Gwilda. And I asked the owner, his name was Jim, I think, what was going to happen to the pups, and he said, "Well, I don't know. We don't have the room for them here. We can't afford to take care of them, and we're going to be taking off this weekend. And the other animals, our neighbors can feed, but these pups is another story. They're going to have to be taken from the parents if they're going to be imprinted on humans. We can't just leave them in there to be raised by the parents, and the cage isn't big enough anyway. We just don't have the capacity." So I came back about a week later when they were ready to go on vacation, and they had the 4 pups inside by then, and he had 2 young daughters, maybe 9 and 11 years of age, and they had the pups in their bathtub, because the pups made a mess in the house wherever they went. Pups pee and poop all over. So the bathtub was a handy place to have them, and they had blue ribbons around the necks of the boy pups and pink ribbons around the necks of the girl pups, and they were just having so much fun with these living teddy bears here. And I asked Jim how much he wanted for the pups, if he wanted to sell them, and he said, "Yeah, I'll sell them." And I asked how much, and he said, "Well, $200 a piece." And I said, "Well, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money for me. I'm just a small shop owner." And I asked if he would take $400 for the 4. And without blinking, he said yes. So I loaded 4 pups in a cardboard box, and the girls were very sad. They kept their pink and blue ribbons as mementos, and I brought the pups home. And I applied for a permit from the DNR so that I could have the pups legally, and I had some acreage, and I fenced in a large amount of land behind me and came right up to the house because I knew what I wanted. I wanted to help reintroduce wolves into the wilds, and this was going to be the seed pack, these four pups, and maybe some other animals I would procure along the way. But my intent was to become one of them, to become a pack member, and I was going to raise these pups. I was going to be their nursemaid, I was going to be their mother, and I was going to be the alpha male until they got big enough that they could take over the pack on their own. And I wasn't concerned at all about them being caged because wolves are instinctual animals. I know they have their inherent wildness. It's not bred out of them as with dogs, no problem. And sure enough, they did not disappoint me at all. They were purely wild animals.
You know, in my experience, I've noticed people have different styles of communication. Some are listeners, some are body-centered or kinesthetic, some are touchy-feely, some are very verbal, and so on. And, you know, I've noticed the same thing among animals, even of the same species. Have you noticed that as well, and would you speak to that?
Oh, I'd be glad to. Yeah, there are 3 archetypes, you know, and some people recognize 4 or 5, but I noticed there are 3 archetypes, 3 general archetypes with humans and with all social animals. There are the nurturers, and there are the leads, and there are the guardians, the guardian warriors. And the wolves, same thing. They distinguished themselves right away. I could see which ones were the most alert and keen. Those were going to be the guardians of the pack. And the nurturers, they were just overgrown puppies. Well, they were puppies at the time, but they were very friendly and outgoing and sociable. And then there were the leads. They were the ones who were going to be the leaders of the pack. You know, they were the alpha male, the alpha female. And they distinguished themselves, and their communication styles were so different, as you indicate, Gwilda. It was beautiful to watch because some of them were more vocal than others. Some of them, or one of them, I would consider to be shy, retiring. And one or 2 of them were more adventurous than the other ones. There was this clear distinction. And, you know, the way I look at it is looking at an organism. An organism is comprised of organs, and every organ is different and distinct, and each one is unique and has to do its unique job. If they all tried to be the same or all tried to be equal, that organism would be in trouble, and the same with the pack. So in our human society, we've missed that, though, because we stress conformity. You know, we throw 20 or 30 kids together in one room in school, and they're all supposed to do the same thing at the same time and learn at the same rate. And it's pitiful because we are not honoring the uniqueness and the individuality of these kids. So
yes, we've
noticed
totally
that
crippled ourselves, haven't we?
Pardon?
We've totally crippled ourselves in so doing.
Totally. We're after conformity because it's a mass production society. We're just cogs in a wheel, and a wolf pack or a clan of hunter-gatherer humans cannot exist that way because individuality is what gives strength to the pack or the clan.
And honoring of that individuality rather than criticizing for being different is so important. And don't you think a lot of the communication comes because we have all these different organisms within one pack, that they communicate as a whole rather than as individuals?
Yes, very good point, Gwilda. Communication is vital. Relationship is communication. You know, I say this, I'm also a I'm also a counselor, and I talk with people.
Here we go. I'm sorry, we're going to have to take a break.
That's okay.
We will return to our discussion after this short break. You're listening to The Science of Magic. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. You want to hear more? Other innovative episodes can always be found on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
You're listening to the X-Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. We can be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. My guest this hour is TAMARACK Song, author of Becoming Nature, Learning the Language of Wild Animals and Plants. All author proceeds from the sale of TAMARACK's book go to support the creation of the Brother Wolf Foundation, a nonprofit sanctuary for timber wolves rescued from puppy mills and backyard cages. For more information, www.brotherwolffoundation.org. Welcome back, TAMARACK.
Thanks.
We were just having fun talking about how animals have different ways, different communication styles, but there's a very specific design to it. You know, I've seen some amazing things with the way animals communicate. If anyone has ever watched a pack of coyotes hunt together, there's no question in your mind that they're in constant communication. They turn on a dime. Their strategy is, even though they might hold similar strategy, it changes every time according to circumstance. There's some kind of communication going on there. Sometimes they yip and carry on, but sometimes they're totally silent. What have you observed with that?
Oh, coyotes are very much like wolves. In fact, coyotes and wolves evolved from the same gene pool. They're very similar, and they can crossbreed pretty easily. In fact, just a little aside, in the eastern half of the country here, the coyotes all have wolf blood in them, which is why they're bigger and they look grayer than the coyotes in the western part of the country. And all the wolves in the eastern part of the country have some coyote blood in them, which is why they're a little smaller than the northwestern wolves, the Canadian wolves. So they're very similar. So what we learn from coyotes we can apply to wolves, not entirely for sure, but in terms of communication, it's there. And you know, the unique thing about the communication as we know it is that it is verbally oriented, and our frontal lobes take care of our verbal communication, and it's a very imprecise form of communication, which is why, as we all know, two people can say the same thing, but they don't necessarily mean the same thing. And that does not work in the wilds, because communication has to be precise. It has to be accurate, because communication is life and death oftentimes in the wilds. Not directly, but in terms of success of the hunt, for example, with coyotes, a pack of coyotes is hunting. They have to know intuitively what each other is saying and thinking and feeling, because they cannot sit down and have an intellectual discourse as we do and use words. They cannot do that. They have to do it at a glance. They have to do it by reading each other's body language. They have to do it by ricocheting their thoughts and feelings off of the animals around them. For example, if the coyote pack has split up and they're going through some tall grassland, they know where their farthest partner is, where the farthest pack member is, because they can see the reaction of the birds over there. So they're not communicating directly with that coyote out in the periphery of the meadow, but they're seeing the squirrel chattering in the tree or a bird flying up, and this is just as good as saying, "Hey, here I am." So this is the sort of communication. The whole hoop of life is speaking at the same time, and the wild animals and us humans, we have this capacity too because we inherited it, are reading everything at once, and all of this is the voice echoing, and we are picking it up. The voice is verbal, it's nonverbal, it's intuitive, it's visual, it's audio, it's everything at once, and this is complete communication. This
I
is
love
what I
that,
call
the
nature's
voice echoing, the voice of life echoing. You know, my son has a Malamute, which is a Alaskan Malamute, which is really close to the Alaskan timber wolf. And
Yeah.
they're very, very wolf-like. And I'll babysit him from time to time, all 145 pounds of him. And I'll make sure my son tells him exactly where he's going and what he's doing and when he'll be back, because otherwise the animal is inconsolable. One time, my son was delayed by a day, and so he calls me. He says, "Mom, I'm gonna be a day late. Can you watch Boosh for one more day?" I said, "Sure." Before the phone call came, that dog started howling, and he didn't stop until my son returned the next day. And he's done that more than once. So that's more than just seeing birds move in the trees. This guy was in a different state.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just fun to
Yeah,
watch the capacity they have that I think that we all should have, don't you?
we have it. There's no doubt about it. You watch children. How often have you heard adults saying, "Oh, my 3-year-old just walks out and is just talking. I don't know who he or she is talking with, but there must be spirit." There is something and someone that child is talking to. Just because we do not perceive it, it is happening. Everything is for a reason. And we have that innate capacity, but what happened to us, we were taught in kindergarten, even before that with our parents, "Hey, you're talking nonsense, be rational here." And you go to school, and you have to sit down and do the same thing at the same time, and you're reading from a book, and the only communication is when the teacher says you can talk, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we become conditioned to be rational creatures. And we're actually intuitive and impulsive creatures with rational capacities. And our rational mind evolved to serve our deeper mind, our limbic process. That's really where 95 to 99% of our processing occurs, as neuroscience research is showing us now. But
And
we
now
rely
we've
on
shut it down to the point that we've lost 3/4 of our natural innate intelligence. That is
You
scary.
got it. Yep.
Hey, you know
Oh
what?
boy,
Another
is
thing
it.
I've seen about among most animals, particularly in the wild, is that they carry no malice. They only perpetrate as much violence as is needed to get their point across or to protect
Yep.
their own. On the other hand, humans are not so. Can you speak to this?
I sure can. They work it out right away. Stress becomes chronic stress, which becomes trauma, and we start acting like traumatized individuals, which is irrational. And we start killing more than we need to kill. We start destroying our planet around us. We destroy our bed. We soil and destroy our bed. It's crazy. Wild animals cannot afford that. They cannot afford the extra energy. They cannot afford to be tearing each other up and killing each other because they rely upon each other. The pack, there's no I in a pack. Every animal in a pack, every wolf, is a vital organ within the organism of the pack, and they all respect each other. Yes, there's tension. Yes, there's stress, but they work it out and they forget about it. It's live and let live. It has to be. Because they not only have to tolerate each other, they have to work like the well-greased gears in a machine. They have to, or they cannot hunt alone. They cannot bring a moose down alone. They have to cooperate. And they have to feel good about it because they're with each other 24/7. It's not like us where, well, we have a little hassle at work, with our workmates, but hey, I'm going home at 4:00, and I'm going to be with my family then, or I'm going out with my friends. That is their family and friends. That is their work. It is their play. It's everything. So, and it's the same with the way we evolved, us humans, for 97% of our existence. We're pack animals. We were clans people, and we had to live the same way. and we got
It's
along with
it's
each
it's
other.
amazing how we've lost that ability. I mean, I've even noticed some of domestic animals tend to have lost the ability to modulate aggression and will use much more violence than is necessary or even kill. Why do you suppose that is?
Boy, it's crazy. Well, let's take dogs as an example because they are evolved from the same gene pool as wolves. What we have done with dogs is I see them as incomplete wolves because we have bred out of them a lot of the common sense, a lot of the intuitive and instinctive abilities that wolves have in order that they become placid and trainable and essentially mirror images of us. How often have you heard someone say, "Oh, your dog acts just like you," and sometimes the dogs even look like the people who are their masters, and that is because we've created them to be subservient. Dogs have essentially we've bred them down so that they're essentially perpetual puppies.
And so they've actually
Totally dependent
imprinted
on
on
us.
our failings. That is sad in my book. Hey, we're going to have to take
Yes.
another break. We'll be back on the flip side of this short break. You are listening to The Science of Magic. Our theme song, One People, One Nation, is from the Winds of Time album by my musical group Starfire and can be found on iTunes.com, cdbaby.com, amazon.com, and my website, gwildawiyaka.com.
One people, one nation.
The scientist and the mystic have been on an age-old, relentless search with one thing in common. They seek truth. Their paths converge in the 40,000-year-old practice of shamanism, an ancient science delving to the quantum level of life, facilitating healing, manifestation, and evolution. I'm Gwilda Wiyaka, the founder and director of Path Home Shamanic Arts School, a unique Colorado State certified occupational school training shamanic practitioners and teachers. We also provide classes for empowering personal lives through shamanism. Our certification classes are in week-long segments enabling international participation, and online classes and long-distance shamanic healing sessions are available. Come discover the science of magic in the limitless world of shamanism. www.findyourpathhome.com.
You're listening to the X Zone Broadcast Network, www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back. This is the Science of Magic, a place where magic and science come together to promote enlightenment. We can be found on www.thescienceofmagic.net. I'm your host, Gwilda Wiyaka. My guest this hour is TAMARACK Song. He's the author of Becoming Nature, Learning the Language of Wild Animals and Plants. www.teachingdrum.org. All proceeds from this particular book goes to Becoming Nature. They go to support the creation of the Boulder Wolf Foundation, a nonprofit sanctuary for timber wolves rescued from puppy mills and backyard cages. For more information, www.brotherwolffoundation.org. TAMARACK, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Well, we were having fun with why the animals tend to only settle disputes to the degree that they need to, and humans and some domestic animals go over the top with it. A lot of that, I think, has to do with breeding as well. Like, some were bred to be killers, like your poor pit bulls. I mean, bless their hearts, the cards are stacked against them. They've been outlawed everywhere because they've been bred to be killers. And we did that. They didn't. So it's pretty sad to see that happening.
Yeah, truly, they don't have their full capacities, and we are entirely to blame, or to credit if you're a dog lover. But there are some breeds of dogs, as you mentioned, Malamutes and Siberian Huskies, who are closer to their original selves. They have more autonomy about themselves. You can just see it in them. You can see it in their look. And I used to have sled dogs before I had wolves, and it was because that was as close to wolves as I could get.
Yeah, they are amazing. And I have had the good fortune of being associated with, but not owning or being with permanently, purebred wolves. And they are a whole different creature. They look in your eyes. I can hear them talking to me.
Boy.
I can hear what they're saying to me. You know, some of them I feel it in my body. Others I literally hear the words in my head. And I'm not like that with all dogs or other animals. Wolves just tend to be more. Oh, it seems to be their skill set, wouldn't you say?
Definitely, wolves are not trainable the way dogs are. You know, there's a saying about many wild animals. They cannot be domesticated, but they can be tamed. You know, you can tame anything if you either cajole or bribe or browbeat them, but that does not mean they are domesticated by any means. They're just
Well, they
subjugated.
domesticate us, I think.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
always
that,
get
that,
the
that,
feeling that they're going,
that,
come on, dolt, you can get this. I know you can.
yep. Good point. Eternal patience, I tell you. When I
They do.
lived
They
with a
have.
pack of
And
wolves,
such big,
you know what
loving
was
hearts.
beautiful, Gwilda, was that they demanded emotional honesty. I could not put on a front because they read right through me. You know, I can deceive humans, yes, and we all do it, but not wolves. No, they couldn't survive that way. You know, they look deep into your soul and they know who you are and what your intent is.
And yet, at the same time, they are so forgiving and so loving. I wish humanity had learned a lot from wolves.
Yeah,
Hey.
I echo that. Let me tell you.
Hey,
Yeah.
I couldn't help but notice the name of your website, teachingdrumdog.org. So I just have to ask, what does teaching drumming have to do with communicating with animals?
Well, we actually don't teach drumming. The drum I learned when I was younger. I spent a lot of time with native elders, and I still spend some time. You know, we have the Ojibwe people living on reserves close by, and the Menominee people, and the Oneida aren't too far away either. And I spent a lot of time in my younger years apprenticing to the elders and the medicine people. And for them, the drum was the center of their social life. And the
Absolutely,
drum
and they are some beautiful drummers.
Oh boy, and that's where the name came from.
Well, it's a very appropriate name, and I had to laugh when I read it because my son's Malamute hates my drums so bad he pees on them every chance he gets. So
That's great. Maybe it's a sign of love,
It must be
marking
absolutely marking it his own.
That's
How
great.
do you view the future of our world and interacting with animals as being interrelated?
I don't see any separation because the future has to be a future of interaction. If we don't return to our roots are going to return us to them. We don't have any choice in the matter. Look what we're doing. Just look what we're doing around us. We are, look at anything. Global warming, the paving over of the land, the destruction of the trees and the forests, and the taking off of the mountaintops to get coal, and the poisoning of the oceans. It just goes on and on and on. It's crazy. And our mushrooming population, it's ridiculous. We keep feeding people, and we keep developing better ways to produce food, and we more to support more and more and more people. Well, what about the tree people, and the bird people, and the butterfly people, and the wolf people, and the zebra people? Lions are in trouble right now. I couldn't believe it. Lions in Africa, their population is dwindling very rapidly. Elephants could go extinct in this century. Just on and on. The story is pitiful.
It's horrifying. And you know what it's like to me? It's the same as piece by piece killing your own body. Because we are all part of the same body, and each piece is equally important, whether we can see it, make it scientifically understandable or not. Is that how you're looking at it?
Exactly. Exactly. There's no difference. There's no distinction between the tree I'm looking at right outside my window and me. And I can actually prove that scientifically. That tree gives me oxygen. It gives me wood to build the house I'm in, and on and on and on. There is an intrinsic relationship here. I can't draw a line. I just can't.
I can't either. And being one of the fortunate or unfortunate that hears the agony in everything around us, I'm appalled that others can't hear it and can't respond to it and can't correct what we're doing. I believe that we can, and I believe the work that you're doing is going to be a major, major part in bringing all that back. Now, it says here that all the proceeds from the sales of the book Becoming Nature go to the support of the creation of Boulder Wolf Foundation, a nonprofit sanctuary for timber wolves rescued from puppy mills and backyard cages. Would you take the last part here to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. This is my way of giving back, of gifting the wolves, the wolf people, for all that they have given me. There are a lot of wolf puppy mills out there. I wish they were banned, but I understand the draw to the wilds, to having a wolf. Instead of a dog, why can't I have a wolf? And some people think wolves make good watchdogs, and the myths go on about what wolves are and aren't. For some people, it's a macho animal. I've got a wolf, For whatever reasons, these puppy mills are cranking out wolf pups, and they sell for good money. And once the people have them for a while, though, they realize that this wolf is not who they thought this wolf was going to be. And they either end up at the Humane Society. Some people drop them off in the woods thinking they're going to be able to be rewilded.
Make it on their own now, yeah.
Yep.
Tamarack, it has come to an end way too soon. Thank you so much for who you are, and what you're bringing. This has been The Science of Magic. Remember, you can always listen to this and other thought-provoking episodes on our website, www.thescienceofmagic.net. Until next time, dear ones, may you be blessed with knowledge, comforted with love, and embraced in the circle of life.